If you're watching, we do appreciate you guys, all the support all season. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Are you guys all blaming the defense then? If you're going to cut a slice of blame pie, is that definitely
90% of the blame for this goes on the defense, and parse it up however you want.
Yeah, I don't know if because I split mine between coaches, stat, defense, Flacco, everything. I even gave injuries 10% because if you're when the Browns had healthy tackles, their run game was very, very good. When they lost the tackles, their run game completely disappeared. And we've said this all season. When you're one-dimensional, you've got 1 foot in the L grave. You're halfway to cooked. The Browns, and I know that they were able to win in the regular season that way, but the playoffs are played completely differently, as we saw yesterday and earlier on Saturday. The playoffs are a different beast. And when the Browns couldn't establish a run game, it was easy for the Texans because they knew what the Browns were going to do, and they were able to stop it.
I blame more than anybody else, and I'm sure there's a lot of people up in arms, and I don't give a rat's ass. Myles Garrett, I blame more than anybody else on this team. He talks all the time. He wants to be defensive MVP, wants to be MVP, this and that. Meanwhile, he no-showed in this huge game, and after the game, he's like, well, we should have adjusted. I don't want to hear about that, Myles. Everybody has plenty of blame to give Jim Schwartz, fine. I don't want to hear that from Myles Garrett, guys. When that game is over, if you're the defensive player of the year, it's on me.
Yep.
I don't want to hear about double teams. I don't want to hear about nothing. When you're the best player, if you're the best defensive player in the league, you have to make an impact in the games that matter. And he made no impact. He did nothing in this game. Did he have any pressures, Mike?
He had three QB hurries.
That's not a pressure.
Then no.
No pressures. None. He had the one play where they threw the ball. It was nothing. He did nothing. He did not lead. He did not play great down the stretch. I don't give a rat's ass if he wins Defensive Player of the Year or not.
I hope he does it now.
He sucked in this game. He was and so was Micah Parsons, by the way. He sucked for Dallas, too.
Yes, he did.
I don't care. He was terrible. I don't care what his pass rush grade is. I don't care about his PFF grade. I don't care what it was. He was terrible, and the team feeds off of him. He did nothing, and they did nothing. The only player that played was JOK. Garrett sucked, and he's the leader of that defense. I'm not blaming Jim Schwartz for it all. You want to blame him? Fine. Myles Garrett, to me, is more to blame than anybody else.
And my criticism of him for a long time has been he doesn't seem, and I'm not saying he doesn't make big plays. He does at big moments. But to me, if I'm going to use a baseball analogy, he's the guy who hits a 3-run home run when you're down 9-1 in the 6th. It doesn't do much for me in that situation. And this team, and this is an overall picture, but he's partly to blame for this. What is this team missing? It's missing fire and brimstone. And I say that because when I was watching the Rams and the Lions last night, I thought, if there's any coach that I would take right now in the NFL, it would be Dan Campbell. He is fiery. His players respond to him. He has the ultimate belief in his players.
I'm laughing, by the way, because he takes the points less than anybody.
I don't love that about him. By the way,
yeah,
the reason he does it is because he's got a great offense. His offense,
for a quarterback that a lot of people have given up on,
and honestly, is playing at an MVP type level.
By the way,
didn't get the credit this year that he deserved.
By the way, only Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes have more postseason wins, quarterbacks under 30, than Jared Goff. He's tied with Jared. He's tied with Josh Allen for third most under 30.
What impressed me most watching that game was there was fire on both sidelines.
Oh yeah, sure.
And look, I know that to me the Tom Landry top hat, arms folded, never shows emotion. That's good. In the 1970s. In today's NFL, I just feel, and that's why I think Campbell and McVay are both so successful and their teams love them. That game was one play. I thought that holding play cost the Rams the game last night, that holding penalty. You could, ticky-tack, maybe, was it a holding? It happened to be on a player who makes a difference in big games. Mm-hmm. And so he got the flag. Mm-hmm. But it put them back 10 yards. and they had to punt, and that was it. They couldn't get the ball back. I love the emotion. I know that Jim Schwartz is kind of that guy, but he's not the head coach. And his defense can rally around that, but for some reason, the big knock on Myles all along is he's not the leader type. He's not the leader type. I'm sorry. When you're the best player on your team, you better learn how to lead. And it better be vocal and not through your actions. I want a Ray Lewis coming through the tunnel with the antics and getting everybody on their feet. I want a Ray Lewis in the huddle on the sidelines after a 90-yard drive, ripping every single guy on the defense a new one because they probably need it. And this team doesn't have that. They don't have it at the head coach. They don't have it as an offensive leader. They don't have it as a defensive leader. And I thought Houston, Ryan's funny. He's not that guy, but his players love him. And I think they have players on the team that will take that leadership role. But here's my fear. Stefanski's going to win Coach of the Year, and Myles Garrett's going to win Defensive Player of the Year. That's my fear.
Listen,
neither deserve it.
Well, I still think Kevin Stefanski deserves it. It's a regular season award.
Yeah, but he went up against the guy who he's a finalist with and got boat raced out coached.
I hear you. I think in the end he had a much better quarterback that played a role. I still think Kevin Stefanski's a very good coach. I'm not going to change my mind on Kevin Stefanski based on one game.
He is 0-2 in the playoffs.
He does get a ding for it. There's no doubt. I mean, there's got to be criticism. He's got to win in the playoffs sometime in the next couple of years.
Correct.
I'm certainly not replacing him right now.
Right.
But he's got to win in the next 2 years. I mean, he's got to win. Otherwise, you got to move on because eventually you got to win in the playoffs. You know, Marvin Lewis won a lot of regular season games, and I like that as a Bengals fan because they had been bad before Marvin.
But he got to the point
it was
where
great,
0-4.
But eventually he kept losing in the playoffs early, and I was like, well, you got to move on.
Yeah.
And so same thing here. I'm not nearly at that point with Stefanski, and I get it. You know, we were lauding him for his staying calm all year and not being too emotional. I thought Dan Campbell. I like Dan Campbell. He's grown on me. I thought he cost them the game against Dallas because he was too emotional in that game, and that could happen too. So kudos to Dan Campbell. I don't want to. For me, I'm not interested in. Listen, Stefanski deserves blame. He's the head coach. He deserves some blame too, no doubt about it. But not to the point where I'm going to fire him after.
No, I don't think there are some that want him fired. I think that's silly.
Yeah,
that's just silly.
You can't pretend to be something you're not. And when you talk about being the fiery emotional guy, that's not Kevin and that's not Myles.
Then the Browns better draft some.
Well, I don't want them to pretend to be something they're not because you're really going to get in trouble if you start going down those types of roads. I've said from day one with Myles, if you want to lead, then lead. And, people want to throw tomatoes at me for the OTAs thing. And I'm not saying that has anything to do with Sarah. Right. Obviously, it does not. But I go back to the conversation I had with him where he watched The Last Dance and he loved it. And he was mesmerized by Michael and he was mesmerized by the way that he led and he wanted to lead. So if you're going to lead. That means showing up to everything. That means taking the blame at the podium on Saturday. Right. Like you said, standing there and saying, I wasn't good enough, that's on me. You don't skirt the blame. Greg Newsom did the same thing. You stand up there and you say,
it wasn't a good look.
I wasn't good enough.
For either one of them.
I wasn't good enough. Put this on me. That's what you do as a leader.
That's right.
And then you go out the next time and you're better. And, throughout the whole second half of the season, and I still think this is true. I don't want to get lost in the emotion of a loss where you say, well, Myles has doubled more than anybody else. And, look at the advanced metrics. Those are all true. That's still true. What's also still true is that the numbers still went down, whether it was the shoulder, whether it was something else. I've said in the past, I felt like there's nothing left to play for in Cleveland by the time you get to December. It's just hard to keep yourself engaged. That certainly wasn't the case this year. We don't know how much the shoulder had to do with it, if it really was the injury. Whatever the reason is, right there's the evidence. Mike's got it on the screen, and it happened again this year, whereas the season went on the last few weeks, the numbers didn't support everything else.
He's the best player in football in September and October.
That doesn't do you much good.
That's not enough. That's not good enough.
And that might be why he's a great player on a team that's had no playoff success.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. What's weird is we talked about how this team had been so soft forever. This year felt like they were a tough team. They were a different team, and they didn't look tough at all. They looked completely soft in this game.
I couldn't believe how slow they looked defensively in that entire game. Brevin Jordan, the backup tight end, is running away
How
from
does
people.
he go, what was it, 80 yards?
76
I
yards.
did
hell
find
does
out
that
real
happen?
quick on Jordan. He played running back for most of his life and was too big to play running back in the NFL. So it's
He
not
should
like this
never
is just
go 76 yards on anybody's defense.
I agree, but he's definitely not the normal speed of a tight end.
I understand that, but I'm sorry, he shouldn't go 76 yards.
Looked like guys were jogging.
The Browns had the lead. Both times they took the lead, they had it for like a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they just gave it right back.
They had the lead twice in this game,
They
believe it or
talked
not.
about it briefly in the telecast, and I was glad they did because it's something that I've noticed during the course of the year at times. I thought Indy used it very, very well to their advantage. We are a fly-to-the-football defense. That's Jim Schwartz's style. I understand that. But when you get away from discipline, assignment-oriented defense, this is what happens. You get gashed for huge plays, and they said it on the telecast, and I was glad they did. What the Texans did, I thought the Colts did it very, very well. I thought the Seahawks did it early against the Browns and then for some reason went away from it.
The Rams did too.
The Rams definitely used it. Now, the Rams do that against everybody, but the Rams absolutely exploited this about the Browns. Get the flow going one way, and you got 11 orange helmets coming.
Yeah.
And then the left side of the field or the right side of the field, whichever one, is wide open. And what stunned me, and I think this might be what Myles was talking about, they didn't change it. Like, I think Jim was like, this is the hand I'm holding, and I think we can win with this. And the Texans just kept saying, okay, if you're going to buy these misdirection fakes, good luck to you.
Yeah.
We're going to burn you the other way. And they did it time and time and time and time again.
But
they saw that, I think, in the Rams tape.
Right.
And they said, okay, that's the blueprint to beat these guys.
But ultimately, they couldn't get any pressure, and they couldn't cover. And those are two things they did well all year, was get pressure and cover. They couldn't do either.
How do you explain, it's the biggest point differential allowed, home and away, in the NFL since 1982.
I can't explain.
Someone jokingly put in the text, it's almost like you're cheating at
I said
home.
that. I said, are they
Now listen,
cheating? I don't know.
I'm not going to point any
No,
allegations.
I don't know, but-
I'm not going to, because it's pretty much impossible to cheat unless somehow you're doing what I'm told is impossible, and that's stealing the other team's communication channel.
I think there's some, two of the games, I think we have to do a deep dive into it to see if we can find something.
And we're going to do that, by the way, Bull. I'm on it. I got my best guy, a.k.a. me.
Okay. I know two of the games where Denzel Ward didn't play and their secondary just got torched. But, maybe...
I don't think that there's not one answer.
No.
I think it's a multiple.
But there's something.
It's a little bit here and a little bit there.
Because it's not, look, if it was 2 games at home and 2 games on the road, that's an anomaly.
Yeah.
But when you're 8-1 at home and you're allowing 17 points a game, fewer
14.
than you are on the road.
Oh, yeah, right.
And you're 3-6 on the road, that's not an anomaly. That is a trend. That is baked into the DNA of this team. And I don't know how else to explain it. Our crowd's good. Detroit's crowd last night was unbelievable.
Yeah, it's not just the crowd.
It can't just be the crowd.
That plays a small role in it, sure, but...
Mary Kay mentioned last night, we were on, Mary Kay and I did Nick on Sports
Channel
Tonight.
3's wrap-up show.
Channel 3's wrap-up show, thank you. And Mary Kay said, she thought something had to do with the fact that, look at the quarterbacks that the Browns played at home versus on the road. And I think there's a little bit of merit to that. Burrow was hurt at home.
Maybe.
Clayton Tune was here. Simeon was here. They had a lot of lower-end quarterbacks at home, and they had, Lamar
Jackson. They also
Jackson.
had Brock Purdy at home.
They did have Brock Purdy at home. That was like the last really good one that I went back and saw.
And he lost
there was some injuries there. And that's why I'm saying there's not just one definitive answer, or else the Browns would have figured it out and solved it. When Trevor Lawrence was here, he was beat up and on one leg, and although he played better than I thought that he would, he moved better than I thought that he would here. But I don't think that there's one specific answer of this is why.
Right.
Because the Browns are well aware of it too. And Kevin was asked about it yesterday. He's like, you got to give me some time on that one. We got to pull that apart and look at that.
I think
I'm glad that was his answer.
Guys, I think the real question for the offseason is which is the real defense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably somewhere in between.
That is the question because
that's what we need to know.
We said that the hardest thing to carry over, it's like the bullpen in baseball.
Yeah.
Defense doesn't always transition year to year. A good offense oftentimes does. But I don't know what we have on defense, and that's troubling because we thought that side of the ball was healthy.
It was.
For the most part, the injuries happened on the offensive side.
Yeah.
So that side of the ball was healthy. They had been playing well. And, I think there is something to that. The Jets at home, okay, they're middling. They're bad. You're supposed to beat up on them. I think they had Jacksonville at home, or were they on the road? They had Jacksonville at home, and Lawrence he played, but he wasn't Lawrence, and hadn't been even after the injury. So maybe there is something to that. But you're right. I don't know what the hell we have now on that side of the ball, because the taste in our mouth that will not wash out in this offseason is we got cooked by a rookie in the playoffs giving up 45 points. Now, I know 14 of those were on pick sixes, but my God, I don't know what we have on it. And by the way, before you go, Mike, one thing that really rubbed me the wrong way, and maybe I'm just being too critical, it was not a good look for Andrew Berry to be standing at the entrance of the locker room, dabbing everybody up. Good job, great season. I just thought that was bad looks. I
didn't see that.
I
saw
it. I had nothing wrong with
Yeah, I didn't have an issue with that.
I just thought it was. I don't know.
That's the totality of the season, and thanking guys. For
I
their
get
effort
that.
for the year.
There's a time and place for that. I don't think after you look like that.
Yeah.
I don't know how anybody can give you congratulations and flowers. I know it was for the season and not for the game. Just didn't sit well with me.
What I thought was ridiculous was Juan Thornhill yesterday saying, well, imagine how good we're going to be next year on defense.
Is he even back?
I mean, he's been one of the biggest disappointments on their defense.
And I don't know how.
I mean, I don't know. Oh, we're going to be so good next year. Okay, maybe.
Why better next year?
I mean, the point is they have the system now for a year. A lot of the same guys are coming
Let me ask
back.
you this before Mike
goes
real quick. You guys can give an answer because we don't know what they are. Is this defense more the one that played the home games, the 9 home games, or the one that played the 9 road games?
I think it's
closer to the home,
I
but I don't
agree.
think it's the home. I don't think it's that good, but I think it's closer to that. I'd say if you stuck a needle in between, I'd say it's on the
Closer to home.
the good side of the needle.
They're better than they are bad. I absolutely
I
believe
think
they're better than they are bad.
Yeah.
All right. I hope
We'll dive into
that's
that a
true.
little
I
more
don't-
tomorrow,
I
but
don't know.
quick, before we